This episode is brought to you by Elevate AI. Are you looking for ways to integrate speech-to-text functionality into your contact center application? Do you often need to convert a lot of audio into text? Well, Elevate AI provides 1,000 interactions of AI-driven transcription per day free of charge. You'll get access to models built over 20 plus years with billions of interactions and great features like social security number and credit card redaction. With a few lines of code, developers can integrate Elevate AI's API into your app. Check out their GitHub repositories for examples and the SDK. It's free to sign up and no credit card is needed. Head over to elevateai.com/HanselMinutes to get started today. That's elevateai.com/HanselMinutes. Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm chatting with Jasmine Greenaway. She's a New York City-based technologist. She has a master's in software engineering, and she has a passion for helping newcomers in tech. And we're going to chat about her new book, Fundamentals for Self-Taught Programmers. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Scott?
I'm very well. Thanks for hanging out. So you've been a full stack developer for a long time, and you did .NET and JavaScript, right? So you are a polyglot.
Yeah. I got my start actually in VB.net. Funny story. I was in my last year of undergrad, and we were working on our capstone project. And one of my friends said, if you do this part of the capstone project in VB.net, I'll hook you up with a internship. And I was like, let's do it.
Let's go.
Yeah. And so I got my start with VB.net and web forms. And then our whole entire team transitioned to C# with MVC. I believe it was 2 at that point. We were redoing our flagship application. And that's where I got my start in JavaScript with jQuery. Had a lot of fun. The jQuery library, core library, and the jQuery UI library. I remember it was a very fun, exciting time in the web.
And so you've been an engineer now for well over a decade, and you work at Microsoft now, focusing on education and data.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, if I understand, though, you have a job. You wrote a book. You still have a full-time job, but you also have like another whole job. Are you an adjunct professor at university?
Yes. I'm an adjunct professor in my local city in New York City. The opportunity really came to me through my network. They were looking for a adjunct professor who had industry experience. And I was like, that's me. Something I've always wanted to do. And so I jumped at the opportunity.
Isn't this, as the kids say, like doing the most? Like you don't have to have multiple jobs, but were you raised to like be a person with like 4 jobs, 5 jobs?
Absolutely. I'm definitely like that. And I think for me, it's a very serendipitous moment in my career because I work with students and new learners at Microsoft, and I do that as outside of my main job. So I feel like it all just kind of merges together.
I feel like, and for full disclosure, we've known each other for a very long time. So we have some history, and I feel like you and I are similar in that we kind of overflow because we have all this information we want to share. And it's just like, I need to tell the people. So you have this information, and it would be bad to not be an adjunct because then you'd just be sitting at home knowing stuff and no one would benefit. Is that a fair analysis?
Yeah, I feel like that. And I think for me, another thing was I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome sharing what I know. And I remember somebody sharing to me at a meetup, they're like, you can't explain it the way that anyone else can. You bring a unique perspective to the ways that you share. And that really kind of put that battery in my back to pursue teaching.
Interesting. Now, there are books for self-taught programmers by self-taught programmers. Do you still consider yourself a self-taught programmer, even though you have a master's in software engineering?
Yes, I don't think I really define myself as that until I made my transition into developer relations. So full disclosure, my this is my first developer relations job, and I got it when I was at Microsoft. It's the only thing I've done, and there was definitely a learning curve for me. So I just consider myself a lifelong learner, and I think that if I even it doesn't matter the path that I took to learn how to write code or things like that. There was a lot of things I still had to do on my own. So though I might not be a self-taught programmer by definition, there are aspects that I have that self-learner spirit. I mean, for example, I taught myself Python, reached for the resources I had to teach myself Python. So in some respect, yes. But I will say, I do come with, a lot of knowledge going into, learning Python. And I will say, for anybody out there who's learning their first programming language, you learn the first one, the others are a little bit easier to learn because you have those like basic foundational concepts.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like I'm a self-taught programmer first, and then I also went to school. But
Mm.
you bring a lot of experience, not just at Microsoft. You worked at Rockstar Games. You were a software engineer full-time at GitHub. You've taught at multiple schools, including, Medgar Evers and LaGuardia. So you are doing the most. I like that you say that you have a self-taught spirit, though. Do you think that the book is right for everyone, even if they don't necessarily initially identify as a self-taught programmer? Because we kind of all are self-taught programmers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really speaks to anybody who's curious. So, those who have never even opened up a code editor, or somebody who is seeking their first role, or really looking to really sharpen their skills or just understand what they're about to get into in the industry, I feel like there are a lot of information on how to get into the industry as a software developer, but I feel like there's not enough information of like what it is, like what is software engineering, what do you do?
Yeah, what is the job? And you get right into diagrams, which I appreciate it. It's like 3 pages in. It's like, okay, let's start talking about diagrams. Was it a conscious decision to have pictures and flowcharts to describe what was going on as opposed to just a wall of text?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the first things that came to mind is that I did not want this to read like a textbook. It really transported me back to my college days where, you'd have those very thick textbooks that I know for a fact that I did not get through an entire semester. And, I really wanted to reach those, visual learners and really like challenge myself to like think about like how I could bring what I've learned or what I've learned along the way as like, visual representation.
So it seems like you wrote the book for yourself. And then if someone else enjoys it, like you wrote the book you wish you had when you started.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And I bring that philosophy honestly to the classroom as well.
Was it hard to decide to do it in .NET? Because I know that when I met you, you were doing Brooklyn JS and running a community, and were a JavaScript person. But you're kind of non-denominational. But you did have to pick a language. You could have done this whole book in Node.
Yes. So, honestly, when someone reached out to me about working on this book and they actually wanted me to do an advanced C# book. And I personally felt like, no, that's not like really what I'm focused on right now. It had been a while since I like wrote C#, or at least at that point. So I essentially had to pitch, an idea to the editing team and say, this is an audience I actually want to reach. And I can do it with .NET. And, I think one of the things that I really love about .NET is how easy it is for someone to get started. Like you install .NET Core, or you use it in the cloud, and, you can get started with your first hello world within seconds. So I thought it was like the perfect language. And I thought it like really like, for me, again, yes, I think I did write it for myself in some ways because it really like brought it home for me, just being .NET, but .NET is my home, my home language, I would say. So it felt good to like bring it full circle.
That's cool. But you talk about fundamentals of data structures, algorithms, pseudocode. The book isn't a .NET book. Like I don't even feel like it really gets thick into .NET for quite a few chapters. And then even then you jump in and out. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, you'll be on like chapter 7, which is about flow control in C#, but then chapter 8 is really just about sorting algorithms and binary sorts and linear sorts, which arguably could be in any language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, I am somebody who has like a very, even though I went to like a, school where it's very structured learning, I feel like when we change topics within like a particular domain, it gets exciting because now that at this point in the book, when we get to algorithms, this person has learned flow control, which, a lot of, these algorithms, these basic algorithms that we cover depend on. So let's put it into practice instead of like adding more. Let's apply what we learn and then move on.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was really cool and that really surprised me was, I'm reading, I was like, object-oriented programming, I'm enjoying your book. And then after we're done talking about object-oriented programming, it's stories from prominent engineers. That really surprised me because I thought this was going to be all about being practical. And then I was like, well, why is she telling these stories? And then I realized how practical it is if your goal is to get me a job, to interview people who got jobs, tell me about their stories so that I might see myself in them. So you threw me before a loop and I was like, I don't know where she's going. But I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is what an iOS software engineer does. This is what a front end web dev does. Because how else would I know that information?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I definitely wanted to bring that element in there because there's so many ways to be a developer, and I really wanted to. And there's so many paths to get there, and I really wanted to share that in the book because when I was envisioning the book, I was thinking about somebody. The initial thought that came to mind was somebody who was a career switcher, somebody is having a frustrating day, maybe on the job, and they're like, I've been hearing about programming for such a long time. I'm ready to make a move. And they pick up this book and, it's not the first thing that they see is like programming where they, or like hello world. It's like, what am I getting myself into? Oh, I can see myself in, in this mother who, got her start, at a boot camp and, made this transition into programming. And now she's a Salesforce developer. So I wanted a lot of people to see themselves and know that they have the capacity to do that and that there is a space for them here.
I have said this publicly a couple of times, but maybe you'll appreciate this. You have a master's degree, and that intimidates me because I went to a community college. When you interact with the I want to say the kids, but the young people, the old people, the career switchers at the university that you teach at as an adjunct, are they intimidated that you have a master's degree, or are you able to separate? Like some people have graduate degrees, some people went to community college, some people are entirely self-taught, and all three of those things are okay.
Yeah, I personally don't even really mention it. When, if someone asked me like yes, I do mention, yes, I went to school here, I got a master's degree. But honestly, I think that, sometimes people have preconceptions of like, that I'm going to be intimidating, but I really try to be very down to earth. So, I think I like to share that, despite, me having a master's degree, I really struggled as undergraduate. In fact, one story that I share is that the department head in the CS department, he saw me at graduation, ran into each other, and he said, "You're persistent." So like I wasn't the best student until grad school, until I, really like grew up. And, so for me, that's what I like to share and like, let people know that it's okay to start over. It's okay to try again. And just be real with whoever I'm interacting with.
Yeah, that's really cool. My wife has a master's degree and she talks to a lot of people who have PhDs, and I interview a lot of folks with PhDs. And I've always thought to myself, man, those PhDs are smart. And they are. But the one thing that you have to say about people with graduate level degrees is that they are persistent. Because a lot of it is just proof that you will not stop. Whether it be you won't stop for this research thing, which will make you a good researcher, or you won't stop problem solving. And ultimately, problem solving is what getting these graduate degrees and writing books and teaching people is all about.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I was actually an adjunct professor at Portland Community College and at Oregon Institute of Technology as well, and realized that looking back on my career now, multiple decades, I think I'm a teacher, not a software engineer, even though I've done more software engineering than teaching. How do you identify?
I love that so much because, as like, a software engineer by title, I feel like I spend a lot of my time sharing what I'm learning. Most software engineering teams, there's things like code reviews where, sometimes you're in a meeting and you're just going over some code, or you're pair programming. You're really like learning together how to make, whatever you're building better, or enhancing it. And I think there's always some sort of element of teaching, especially as you move up in your career. I think it's important to understand or learn how to share and teach. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And especially, and that's what I love about teaching at in community college, because I feel like, in those 2 year degrees, I find that like it, is like a faster track into like really getting to that practicality, like really bridging that theory to that practical parts of what we're learning. Yeah, I think it's really cool that you are an adjunct. How long were you adjunct for?
Oh my goodness. I'd have to look at my LinkedIn. It was several years. One of the things that's funny about my degree that you might appreciate, because like there's the standard way everyone gets degrees, and then
Hmm.
there's like those that struggle. And I struggled, and I started my undergraduate in I said undergraduate. I only have an undergrad. I don't have a master's degree. I started my 4 year degree in 1992,
Hmm.
and I didn't graduate until 2003.
Oh, wow.
People
Hmm.
don't know that. It took me 11 years because I
Hmm.
was working full time as a software engineer and going to school at night. And I had to do my associates, which is my Portland Community College degree. And then I transferred to a state school, which is called OIT. And it turns out, you probably know this, after 7 years, if you don't get your 4 year degree in 7 years, credit starts disappearing.
Oh.
So they'll call you and they'll say, "Hey, it's been 7 years since you started your degree, and you need to take Writing 121 again."
Oh,
And I'm like,
no.
"Well, hey, has English changed like as a language?" We're like, "No, but your credit has expired."
Hmm.
And then they want you to take it again. So then I had to take Writing 121 again. But by that time, I had also written a bunch of books on .NET and ASP.NET. So I was able to turn in my books, like 1,000 page books by rocks, and get credit for like writing 211. Uh, and then they're like, but you're, imagine this kind of like rolling window of time, and like credit just keeps falling off the other side, and I
Mm.
can't get it done fast enough. So I made a deal with the dean at OIT that if I taught, and I was the only non-graduate degreed teacher doing adjunct work, that they would let me continue. So as long as I was an adjunct, I could also finish my degree. So I was teaching C Sharp, XML, and web services, which at the time was SOAP, while simultaneously going to school in order to maintain the degree, and then finally graduated in 2003, 11 years into it. So I
Oh,
kind
wow.
of like hustled my way into a degree with just scraping every credit I could while also teaching as an adjunct.
Oh, man. Yeah. So you know what it's like to be doing the most for sure. That's
Yeah,
amazing, though.
well, giving talks and like doing the stuff that someone in their 20s has the energy to do.
Hmm.
But I've got my degree on the wall here, and one of the things that you said I wanted to touch on. My degree is in software engineering. Is yours in computer science or software engineering?
Software engineering.
And
Yes.
that's about practicality, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. I was actually really annoyed when initially when I made my transition from into software engineering. So I initially went to school to be a meteorologist. The movie Twister changed my life. I wanted to like do research, and then I got to school and I took a class on C and another one on Perl, and I was like, I'm switching to software or switching to computer science. But the school that I was at the time, the degree program, the CS degree program was so small that they had initially pretty much like paused taking in new students, and so they had software engineering as a degree, and I was like, oh, what is this? And I'm actually really glad that I took that pathway because I think I learned a lot more. I had a lot. I had a lot more like I didn't realize it really opened my mind up to a lot more options in the tech industry.
Yeah. At my school, at Portland Community College, there was already a computer science track, but they had you using like Word and Excel and learning about theory and then compilers, while
Hmm.
software engineering technology was right at the beginning of when what we called extreme programming, and now we would call it just
Oh,
agile, was
yeah.
starting up. And it was basically a vote of no confidence against the computer science department to say, let's talk about actually shipping. Because I feel
Mm.
like a lot of these like leet code, let's do algorithms, don't teach you about squishy humans
Hmm.
and how humans are squishy. And
Hmm.
it turns out there's a lot of humans you're going to have to deal with when you become a software engineer. So it
Hmm.
taught us how to ship. So I'm light on the computer science and the compiler theory and stuff, and heavier on the patterns and practices of software engineering. And I prefer that. It's much more tactical, I guess, as a
Hmm.
degree than computer science. But I don't know if we'll probably get hate mail from the listener now.
I hope not, but I just really think software engineering it's really such a broad topic, um, that like you could really like talk about all different types of things. So yeah.
Yeah. Have you found that you learned in your master's degree that putting humans at the heart of software was a big part of that?
Oh, um, I think so. I think there was one particular class that was I don't remember the name. I don't remember the name of the class, but it was a lot about like how to be very intentional with like the languages and the tools that you're using so that you're not missing any blind spots. So essentially there was one this particular professor really had it out for C++. I don't understand why, but he like had a lot of like stories about just things that have gone wrong, I guess in his professional career with the language. And it's just like just be aware of like limitations of a particular language, and like things that can essentially get you into trouble.
So he was just like had a bias against a language.
Yeah, he really did truly did have it out for C plus plus. But yeah, I think what I learned from that is just to be just be aware, just be aware of like what you're building and like who's it impacting.
Yeah, I really hope I probably said some mean stuff about Java or Pascal 20 years ago, but I really go out of my way to try to be non-denominational.
Hmm.
People often use the analogy of religion and languages. And if you have a religion and you're excited about it, I'm excited for you.
Hmm.
And I feel like that as a teacher, if some kid comes in and they're really amped about Erlang or
Hmm.
Rust or just something that's slightly more obscure than your C and your C++ and your C sharps,
Hmm.
man, good for you, kid. Like,
Yeah.
eyes wide open, be aware that being in Erlang may be career limiting from you're not going to go to like Craigslist and find a job really fast doing Erlang, but they're out there, so be
Hmm.
excited about your language. I was
Yes.
telling actually I told this joke before. I went to Helsinki, to Finland. I think you've been to Finland, right? Haven't you?
Yes. Hmm.
And they got this crazy language.
Hmm.
Finnish is like unlike any language on the planet. So I come back and I tell my kid about Finnish, and he's like, "Why do they bother? Finnish is not going to win."
Hmm.
And I was like, thinking about it in terms of like a language needing to win, right? So then
Mm.
if you apply that to like, why does Erlang bother? Why does Rust bother? It's not going to win, but the Finns like their language. They
Hmm.
enjoy it very much. It's cultural. It makes them feel they can write poetry in their language. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So if you're excited about a programming language or you even want to make your own, darn it,
Hmm.
good for you for being
Yeah.
excited about that, even though it's not going to win. And that's okay because everybody wins, right? As long as we're
Yes.
making stuff.
Exactly, 100%. And that's what I really love about teaching is because, especially like these foundational level courses, because I really like to like add different languages and just like I want it to feel like a buffet. Like try out this language, try out this one. Oh, you didn't like this one, or you like this one better. Like I really want them to compare and like contrast on like things, but at the end of the day, they still have the foundations. They still know how to write an if statement, between whatever they decide to do.
And speaking of foundations, at the very last chapter, you go deep on preparing to enter the job market, sharing your experiences. You cover mentorship, you cover resumes. Like what I thought was going to be a fundamentals of software is really a fundamentals of being a programmer and living and existing in this world, including and not limited to entering the job market. That sounds like that was also an intentional choice on your part.
Yes, I wanted to end it there because, the way the book is designed, I really wanted someone to skip around, except for the middle area. Yes, you probably want to like start off, especially if you're new to programming in the beginning, like beginning of the unit. Like, how do you get started with C sharp? But like, I wanted somebody to skip around, and I wanted somebody. I could imagine some, again, like the idea of like somebody frustrated at their current job. They're looking to make a switch, and they're looking through the chapters, and they're looking through the table of contents, and they're like, oh, what does it take to get there? And they skip to this last chapter, and they get there, and they realize, okay, this is something that's doable. This is what I need to prepare, knowing that there is much more to learn if you just go to the front and get started.
So now that this book is complete and you're able to go and like give it to anyone who's on like next to you on the plane, I always imagine you write a book, you go on an airplane, and then you're like, what do you do for a living? I want to be a programmer. Oh, I want to be a programmer too. Well, I've written a book, and then boom. So you're ready. You can be handing this book out to people and making it happen. Are you ready to start changing lives? Is that the goal?
Yes. So one of the first things that now that the summer is here, and now that the semester is over for me, I am going both feet in to really, trying to reach my local community first. So I want to do a workshop in my local library. I want to do some streaming. I just want somebody to get excited about what the opportunities that's available to them. So just a few lines of code. I don't know exactly what I'll have them do, but like something that they can do in 30 minutes. And I'll take the approach that I do in the classroom, where I honestly treat it like a workshop, like a presentation. Like I pair program with my students, so they get to see me like have to open a tab and search for how to write to line and things like that. And we really make it like an adventure together. So that's the approach that I hope to take with this particular audience I'm reaching out to, because I want to add that practicality. I want to add that realness to programming. I want them to see me as, a developer who's been, doing this for over a decade, still learning and learning with them.
I want to give you a compliment as someone who's known you for a long time. One of the things that I really like about you is, even though you work globally and you travel the world and you give talks and stuff, I've always thought of you as being really community focused. And I love that your answer wasn't, I'm going to make a Discord and I'm going to go and start a bunch of threads on Twitter. I'm going to go and talk at my local library. Because whether it be like Brooklyn JS, where I hung out with you in like at the top floor of a bar and they had a projector and we talked about JavaScript, or this book, that you are so focused on your local community, like work locally, think globally. And that just is what I think about when I think about you, Jasmine.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Scott.
Well, this has been really great. So the book is Fundamentals for Self-Taught Programmers. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at Packt. If you buy it from Packt directly, they'll give you a DRM-free PDF so you can read it anywhere. And I understand that there's some kind of a coupon link we'll be able to put in the show notes as well that you'll be able to provide us, Jasmine. So be sure to visit the website to get that link. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We have been chatting with Jasmine Greenaway, the author of Fundamentals for Self-Taught Programmers. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.